We ready?
We are streaming live.
Okay, so let's start. Well, welcome everybody. It seems like it's been a while, but we're here back. Lance Luke and Martin Pea, part of Ask the Expert series, and we're going to be traveling outside of the United States to the UK just because we have an interesting topic called flammable cladding in Scotland. And thank you for those of you who are on our Zoom platform, as well as those tuning in on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I see we have a bunch of people from outside the US, um, England, and Scotland, which is interesting. And I happen to be fortunate enough to have traveled to London, and my wife and I were on a cruise, but we ended up in Chelsea hanging out for a while and then, visiting all the historic sites in London. And then we went to Southampton where we caught the cruise ship. So it was interesting to check out what London had to offer. We even got to see the King Charles. We're just walking down that big avenue and we saw all these cops and go, oh, what's going on here? And they stopped all the people on the street and there's a motorcade, um, black limos and all that, and happened to take a view of who's sitting in one of the limos and King Charles waving. And so that was the highlight of the day, aside from eating lunch somewhere. I forget, but we're going to talk about cladding, which is an exterior application of a building product that's called cladding. So let's say you have a uh, square building or high-rise rectangle building, and it's made out of concrete, and they put this cladding over the exterior of the concrete. It's sort of like if you have a house and instead of painting your house, you install vinyl or metal siding to it. That's similar, a similar concept to that. But that's just the idea of what's happening. This webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, which is a Hawaii-based building inspection and construction management company. And I'll go through these slides here. I'm all over the place. As you can see, I'm hanging off a high-rise building, 40-story high-rise building, inspecting concrete, painting, and then I'm on the roof, checking out the roof. But let's talk about the historical background, key events leading to current regulations. So I basically told you what cladding is, and um, it only became a problem that people were aware of. It was already a problem to begin with, but um, the majority of people weren't even aware of this. And when I say people, I'm talking about the general public as well as the real estate developers, the building officials, building department officials, the departments that issue building permits, engineers, architects, contractors. No one really knew about this issue uh, until I would say like 2017 was a big one. But let's go back in history a little bit. In 1999, there was a high-rise building in Irvine called Garnock Court, and it triggered an initial investigation. That's when they first found out about the cladding issue. And from that time, they were figuring out that, hey, this building product, it just catches on fire. And so can you imagine you have a high-rise building and you clad it, you put um, cardboard or plywood on the outside of the building. Imagine that. And imagine one of the units caught on fire and the fire spread to the exterior of the building. Because it had plywood, now the whole building is on fire. That's the issue with cladding, except it's more dangerous than that because the cladding is made up of two panels, exterior panels, and they have a building product, a material sandwiched in between the two panels, and that's the material that's flammable. So it can just, the whole building goes up in flames because of that cladding situation. So it's interesting because the building is burning from the outside to the inside rather than in reverse. Normally, a fire start inside the unit, it just spreads inside the building and then outside, right? So fast forward to 2017, there was a big Grenfell Tower fire in England. And after the investigation, they found out that cladding was problematic. So the investigation exposed systemic safety failures in the cladding across many buildings in the UK. Just to give you an idea, the Grenfell Tower was a high-rise building in London, and it caught fire due to the flammable cladding. 72 people died in that fire, and the investigation uncovered failure in construction practices, fire safety standards, and regulatory oversight. When I reviewed the plans of the Grenfell Tower, they only had one interior stairway. And high-rise buildings, as you know, have two exterior stairways at the end of the building. And that's safer because if you only have one interior stairway and you have a fire, everyone's going to try and clog up there, and then it's hard to get out. So that became a major problem. By the way, I was actually, when I went to London, I actually went to the site of the tower, and it's all boarded up because people are saying that it should be a memorial and not have anything built there anymore. So I didn't get to really, look inside the building or even um, outside. I had to stay kind of far away and look over the barricades that they had. But um, even though the fire happened in 2017, when I was there several years ago, there were still people placing flowers and different things. So it's a pretty big, memorial site at this point. Now, after 2017, the government took action, and there was temporary bans on the combustible materials and stricter fire safety codes. And it's just unfortunate that disaster such as the Grenfell Tower have to happen to trigger um, investigations and stricter building codes. So the key milestone in the Scottish cladding safety regulations, the government had formed a regulatory authority or agency about a year after the Grenfell fire. So in 2018, there was a temporary ban on buildings that were over 11 meters, they say, which is equivalent to 36 feet. So we talk about a building, height of a building in feet, right? So 36 feet is equivalent to a 40-foot building, which is only 4 stories high, right? It's not considered a high-rise building by US standards. US standards, a high-rise building by definition is any building that's over 7 stories high. And you might ask, well, whose idea was that to come up with 7 stories? Well, you know, your fire truck, and you have the hook and ladder. The ladder can only reach up to 7 stories, probably little over 7 stories. So that's why. So if the fire department ladder can't reach higher than 7 stories, they're not going to allow combustible materials above that, because if you have combustible cladding that catches on fire on the 20th floor, the fire department can't reach it by ladder. Okay, so that's the main reason. Some more key milestones. There was a formal ban on combustible cladding, but then there was an elimination of fire testing. So it went back and forth. Okay, how are you going to figure out if the cladding is combustible or not? And combustible means that it's material that could easily catch on fire. That's called combustible. So if you don't have the testing done, how do you know for sure that it has the proper rating or not, and it's not combustible, right? You need to have official testing. But it was applicable to new and replacement cladding for high rises. So we haven't really had any concrete direction until I would say about 2022. And then in 2023, the government passed the Cladding Remediation Act. So what happened here is the government authority was mandated. So now the government had the power to assess and remediate buildings. They had the power to inspect. So even if the owner of the building said, no, we don't want you to inspect, the government by law can just go in there and do their inspection. And if the owner or developer didn't fix it, the government could go in and fix the building and then charge back the owner or developer. So in 2023, there was a creation of an entity called the Cladding Assurance Register and Responsible Developer Scheme. And I don't know why they use the word scheme. You could say it's a association or a group, right? Rather than a scheme. The word scheme doesn't seem too nice of a word, but that's just what they called it. Remember, this is in the UK, it's not in the United States, so they have different terminology on different words. Okay, so the act was passed and now it became law. So it empowered the government to do whatever they wanted to, intervention without the owner approval or consent, establish standards for single building assessments. You have engineers and inspectors go to different buildings to go and check and cut out pieces of the cladding and send it to a lab for inspection. And then the creation of a framework for responsible developers to ensure funding and participation. Okay, so this whole entity was set up for purposes of inspection, repair, and developers who were involved in building the building. So because we're in talking about UK, the 600,000 is not in dollars. It's in not euros, but pounds. So 600,000 pounds are allocated to projects without linked developers. So the nomenclature definition of a linked developers who were still around and could be targeted or could be pointed to and say, hey, developer, you developed this building and you're partly responsible. So, you have to contact your insurance company and kick in some money so we can do the remediation. Now, in older buildings where developers not around, the developer entity went bankrupt or they moved to another country outside of the UK, can't get a hold of them, or they passed away or something. So there was the 600,000 pounds allocated to projects without any developer connection, and that's without linked developers. So the UK government allotted more money, about 97 million pounds allocated just for the country of Scotland, and um, not too much money was spent to date. And the majority of funds remain unused, which means that it's a very, very slow process, maybe due to people not wanting to cooperate, or it's just a slow process when you're dealing with the government. Introduction of building safety levy, financial overview and challenges. Now, um, there was additional funding mechanism to support large-scale remediation, high-rise buildings, that's a large scale when you're talking about 10, 20 or more stories. And it takes a while to implement all that. Now, here's where it's a little bit different than the US. The developer accountability, the role of responsible developer scheme in funding and remediation efforts. So basically, the government is forcing the developers who are around to take a seat at the table and participate in this, either by funding part of the remediation work themselves or contacting the insurance company. So it's a good thing where the developer's still around and can be forced to take accountability. So let's talk about a case study. This is the first building in Scotland that was had the cladding remediation, and the name is Aurora Apartments in Aberdeen. I have never been to Scotland. I was supposed to go to give a concrete seminar, but I never made it. And then the pandemic hit, and everyone's plans got thrown aside. So, case study here. Here's the overview. It was a 9-story building identified as high priority, and it was fully remediated under the single building assessment program. So this building got fixed up, and hooray, because it was the first building, and after that it became safe as far as any kind of fire conducive conditions like the cladding. So here's some of the details. So in the remediation work, in the construction work to fix the building, the key details: removal of the combustible cladding and timber frames. Timber is wood. Installation of state-of-the-art non-combustible materials, and using advanced techniques such as a drone, using laser scanning for precision planning. And if you can see the screen, there's an image of non-combustible material. So non-combustible, you have, if there was ever a fire and the flame hit the material wouldn't catch on fire. Okay, so now you have a safe building. You have cladding that's cannot catch on fire, And so if there was ever a fire in the building, the whole building's not gonna go up in flames because you have a better exterior product. So the outcome is the residents now live in a safer, fully compliant building. So this Aurora apartment building serves as a blueprint for future remediation projects. So this is the ideal project that the other buildings are gonna look at and strive for to copy for their remediation. So what is the current status of remediation efforts in Scotland? Uh, the buildings identified 105 buildings with dangerous cladding. 25 of those 105 is high priority. I had another study that showed that there were thousands of buildings in Scotland that had cladding, but I'm not sure, what the degree of priority was. So Aurora Apartments was completed just last year in 2025. I mean 2024, which is a good thing. This year is 2025, so hopefully there's more buildings in the pipeline that are going to be fixed up. So in England, 42% of buildings with remediation started. So in England, they started to do the conversion, the remediation to. In Scotland, less than 10% progress on identifying high priority buildings. I'm not sure why Scotland is so behind, um, although they're part of the UK. So England may be more proactive. It seems like it. So let's talk about key goals here, government and industry. One, accelerate single building assessments and remediation efforts. And number two, fully utilize allocated funds and expand financial mechanisms like the levy. Now, um, that the levy is like, have you heard of like a tax levy? You don't pay your IRS taxes, and then the IRS issues a levy, and then now you can't get your money out. Uh, Similar to that. So at least there's a plan, but the plan has to be implemented and uh, followed, and not, take a long time to get things done. Number three, strengthen cooperation between government, developers, and homeowners. And then four, scale up best practices demonstrated in the Aurora Apartments project. Okay, that's good, proactive. And so basically, in a nutshell, that's the presentation. The conclusion that I have in this presentation is just be aware. Those of you who are listening in, even if you're listening on a replay on social media, or rewatching the masterclass video at a later date, uh, always be sure that you know what building components are in your building, and you can't tell just by looking at it, right? Um, it has to be tested. Pieces of the building, of the cladding, have to be taken out and tested, so people would know exactly what the materials are in the cladding, because there's variations in percentages of um, combustible material. Okay, but even if a small percentage of the material is combustible, it's still bad, right? Um, but there's varying degrees of material combustibility. And then what you missed, we've given a lot of previous webinar master classes. You go to our website, take a look at it. What's coming up? We have, to close out this year of presentation, the next one we're offering is change orders, the cost of change orders. How are change orders creative and what causes them and how does a contractor figure out what the cost is. Okay, and even if you're a homeowner, it doesn't have to be, so the change order issue applies to whether you're a single family homeowner or uh, a board member of a large condo association. So it's the same principle, regardless of whether it's a one house or a one huge 40-story condo building, shopping center, hotel, office building, or warehouse. The change order idea is basically the same. And this is going to be very interesting. Uh, I'll explain the mindset of a contractor and how they think and how they calculate additional cost. Sometimes contractors, when they hear the word change order, dollar signs go up because that's the way to collect more money from the unsuspecting homeowner. Then after that, I'm going to be talking about the LA wildfire breakdown, taking things apart, what happened, how do we protect ourselves in the future, that kind of thing. That could be interesting. Then after that, I'll be talking about construction punch lists, closeout. After you finish a construction project, whether it's a brand new building or whether it's a renovation or remodeling or you're adding an addition, you still want to do a punch list. And I'll be talking about the legal ramifications of a punch list and closing out the project and good things like that. And then after that, the last series presentation of our whole series for 2025, I'll talk about holiday safety. Believe it or not, there's times where Christmas trees catch on fire or the house is on fire because of lighting that was hooked up on the outside that wasn't correct. And I'll be giving you tips on those. You might ask, well, you're talking about other videos and stuff on your website. What is your website? How do we get to it? It's askbuildingexpert.now.site. And every day we're adding things to it. So it's becoming a huge website. In that website, we have other websites that we have links to. So we have websites in a website. So expert websites, I talk about all kind of different building and construction components and subjects, from asphalt, painting, waterproofing, hurricane ties, even contractor licensing issues. And we have one we developed for Lahaina wildfire, things like that. We have a national expert blog. We're always contributing articles. And you have to learn something. If you read the blogs I wrote and you don't learn anything, can you send me an email and let me know? Because I don't get too many of those. If you can learn one thing, we're happy. We have a whole list of webinars that we previously given, and there's a long list. I think we've given maybe 150 so far, but yeah, it's a lot. And then also I've written over 70 books, 70, on different topics of construction and buildings, condominiums, real estate one, senior safety in the home, how safe is your building. They're available. Go to our website and it'll take you to the Amazon link there. So now we get to the Q&A part. And to me, this is the most fun part for me because I just take random questions. And so if you have any questions or comments, even if you don't have a question, if you have a comment, please post it, and if we can't get to it today, we'll get to it very soon. And we have a slogan that we respond to everybody's post. So if you have a question, post it, and we'll get to it if we can't address it today. Also, if you have any contacts for free tickets for Martin and I to go to Scotland to look at some buildings, we would welcome that also. And yeah, I think it'll be good. And Martin and his wife were world travelers. They used to travel all around the world, and when the pandemic hit, they couldn't travel, so they decided to work in their yard instead. But I think Martin's kind of getting tired of doing yard work, so we'll see what happens. All right, Martin, I see you smiling, so it looks like you may have some questions from our audience here. I know I went through it really fast, and I wanted to cover the meat and potatoes part of it so I could have some time for the Q&A. So, and then the other thing is, we're used to talking about a lot of things happening in the United States. So this is one of the few times where we would go off from the United States and talk about something happening, in a different country. And I know in the past I talked about the Eiffel Tower in France, and I gave a talk about ancient buildings in Italy, and then another one I talked about the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain, that big church. So yeah, it's not that many times we talk about subjects that are outside the United States, although any of our topics would apply to any building anywhere in the world. And it could be in Italy, it could be in Japan, Philippines. All the buildings, have a foundation, or hopefully they do, walls and a roof, and electrical and plumbing. So modern technology, every building is basically the same. And so if you're tuning in from outside the US and you have a specific question on what applies in your part of the world, then contact me and I'll see if I can help you. Also, I forgot to mention Portugal. That's one of my favorite places to go to, Madeira, which is a separate island, but it's owned by Portugal, and it's Madeira, sort of like how Hawaii used to be in the 60s and early 70s, and that's why I like it. There's not that many people, although it's getting more built up now. Seems like every time I go there, there's more high-rise condo, apartment, or hotels going up. So, and I always thought that I wouldn't broadcast it, so I didn't want people to know, because then everybody will start going there. And I wanted some peace and quiet when I travel around the world. So anyway, let's get to the questions. So I'll turn it over to Martin.
Okay, Lance, thank you. And we've only had a couple of questions come in. I guess the topic is a different one, like you said, for sure. Let me check with the first one here, and it's what steps can homeowners in a high-risk buildings take to ensure their properties are prioritized for cladding remediation?
The first step would be to make sure that you know what the building material is. So if you don't have it tested, like I mentioned before, you're not going to know for sure. So that's the first step, to make sure there's an inspection and make sure there's testing done. Now, not every building has cladding. Some may look like it does, but it doesn't. So if you don't have the cladding, then you don't worry too much. But if your building does, so the first step would be, number one, does the building that I live in or work in have cladding? And if so, is it dangerous? So inspection and then testing and figuring out, well, whatever the results are, that's going to be the determination of what to do. If the cladding is not combustible material, then you don't need to do anything. But if it is, then what percentage is, and is what category is the building in? Dangerous and needs to be removed right away, or you can wait a while, uh, do it at a later date. So that's the first step, to know what building components are in the building, and is it safe or unsafe. So that's the main thing. And you can't do it yourself. You're going to need to hire experts or talk to the government or whoever you need to. So those of you who are tuning in that live in Scotland, you guys, your government and the private sector are way behind on getting your buildings fixed up. So I don't know what you can do to try and speed things up, but just try your best.
Oh, okay. Well, I just was kind of wondering too, is cladding a type of exterior material? Like around here we get well, you can have hardy board or all that kind of stuff on the residentials. Is it a particular kind of material, or is just an exterior type of a material that's on buildings?
Yeah,
I'm just kind
yeah.
of curious.
Okay, no, I'm glad you asked, because if I wasn't clear in the beginning, then uh, I'll further explain it, that the cladding is a material that is applied on the exterior of a building, and the material is usually um, like a sandwich, right? Like, analogy would be, you take an ice cream sandwich, you have two layers of that chocolate bar material, and then inside you have your vanilla ice cream. So cladding is like that. You have, two layers, and then um, two layers on the outside. That most times the cladding material is aluminum, and then the interior material, which is combustible, is a totally different product, and that's the thing that catches on fire. So can you imagine, you have two sheets of aluminum and you have rolled up newspaper between the two sheets? Is that combustible? Yeah, it is, right? So just think of it like that. Now, the whole ice cream sandwich would be applied on the exterior of your concrete building. And you might ask, well, why do we need all that? Well, um, the Grenfell Tower actually had cladding installed on the exterior because it reduced the temperature. So in the interior of the apartments, it was hot. So the cladding actually helped reduce the heat, um, the natural heat. So the interior of the units were cooler. And that's the idea of the cladding. It's also used as uh, decoration to make the building look good, so you're not looking at a whole concrete wall with windows. So, but the main purpose is insulation. But unfortunately, um, the incorrect materials were used that were combustible, easy to catch fire, and that was the main cause of these disasters, where, like the Grenfell Tower, the whole building caught on fire. So can you imagine, your whole building on the outside catches on fire, right? So it's very, very dangerous. It's not a good situation. And at the time, the builders didn't know. No one really was aware of that until after, right? It's almost like um the in the early 60s, 70s, uh contractors, developers, builders, they were using paint that had lead in it. It was lead-based paint. And then building materials that had asbestos-containing material in it. No one knew at the time that these materials were hazardous until later when people started getting sick and then testing was done and go, oh, okay, so here's the cause of the problem. So unfortunately, it was a case where not too many people knew about it, and it took a disaster, a tragedy, to open up people's eyes and go, well, I think we need to investigate this more and see what's going on. And then they figured out what the problem was. And then now what do? We have all these buildings that were built with this bad cladding. And do we just leave it or do we do something about it? Right. So because the material was so unsafe, that's why the government stepped in and mandated the removal and remediation. So it was kind of a poor situation rather than uh, well, we know your building is like that, but just be more aware or something like that. So it's almost like when there's a bad product, there's a recall. That's kind of like the same concept. It was so bad that now it was a recall. Now you got to remove the cladding on the building and put something better. And as you know, once the high-rise building is built, can you imagine taking that cladding off the building? It's not an easy job because you gotta work on a high rise. You're not on the ground prying off, pieces of building material. So
Okay.
anyway, thanks. Yeah, I
Well,
thanks for asking because now that's my opportunity to explain things a little better if I didn't explain it in the beginning, right? And now I'm getting hungry for ice cream sandwich, but I'll wait till after.
yeah. Well, I guess the more I listen to what you say, the more questions I get. If I can ask mines also, is do we have an issue of cladding pan material in the islands as far as you're aware of? That those kind of cladding things, yeah.
Oh, in Hawaii, in the Hawaiian Islands, I don't think so because buildings were built a little different, and most of the buildings in Hawaii are reinforced concrete buildings, not made out of wood. I'm talking about high-rise buildings. So they don't have cladding, and then you could, the material called stucco. It's exterior insulation finish system. That's the engineering word for it. They call it EFS, which is exterior insulation finish system or exterior insulation finish. Um, that's like stucco, synthetic stucco. And you could kind of say that that is sort of like a cladding because that would go over the concrete. Um, but that doesn't have the same um, combustible materials, right? It's different. So and all the U.S. products are tested and they have their certification and all that. So um, in Hawaii, I don't think there's any building that have the cladding. There could be, but uh, no one's gonna know, right? That's a bad part. No one's gonna know until there's a fire and then the whole building burns down and go, oh, what happened here? Right. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll go on to the next questions that have come up, Brett.
All right.
You're good at triggering questions that I always ask you and bother you with. Yeah. Okay. The next question is, who will bear the financial burden of cladding replacement if a building does not have a linked developer?
Well, as I mentioned before, the government stepped in and provided money. So there's a pot of money there. Uh, and I guess it could be first come, first serve. And I don't know what happens when the money runs out. Hopefully the government would fund it again. So the government of Scotland was aware that not every building there's a developer that's linked to that building. So you run out of key players, and then you have these standalone buildings that have nobody behind them to support the cause. So that's where the fund comes in. So the government came up with the idea. So the funding is actually coming from the government sources. I'm not sure of any private funding, but yeah, we'll see what happens when the money runs out. Hopefully, the government will put in some more money to have it fixed because um, otherwise the residents that live in the building is going to be on their own with a bad built building and no relief. It's kind of scary to think about that. So hopefully, all the buildings with the bad cladding material would be fixed up. You know, now and in the future.
Okay, thank you. I guess the next one are kind of related to this uh, is what are the penalties for developers who refuse to participate in their responsible developers scheme, as they called them, yeah?
Well, it's interesting because the way the law was passed at the time, it basically would treat these people as criminals. So there's fines, there's even jail time, um, compensation that they have to pay, and then also, let's say a developer refused to cooperate. If that developer wants to build any more buildings in the area, the answer is going to be no. So they're going to be uh, restricted from getting any of their projects approved unless they come to the table and deal with the situation. So the restrictions are pretty heavy. So it basically forces these people to deal with the problem. They can't run away because most developers they build more than one building, right? And that's how they make their living. So if they want to continue doing what they're doing, they're going to have to go back and agree to fix the problem. Otherwise, the government's not going to let them build any more buildings. So the restriction on their livelihood is enough to force these people to come to the table and deal with the problem. The other thing is they don't want to get fined and thrown in jail for not cooperating. So it's pretty strict if they don't choose to cooperate.
Okay, and that's, I checked our social media sites and I don't think we saw any questions in our Zoom here. But I had another kind of related and maybe unrelated question. And this kind of, I guess it relates to materials and safety ratings. I guess there must be a system within the building industry or I guess all industries as far as the safety ratings of materials used, like and let's focus on the building side of it. Are most materials provided some kind of a safety rating that, they're safe to use, or, they don't have these at-risk type of materials in them, like you mentioned about the lead and all that. Is there a process either locally or nationally to make, to verify the safety of materials used in particular in the building industry?
Yeah, that's a good question, and the answer is yes. For different building materials, there are safety regulations or uh, fire rating criteria, and it goes through rigorous testing. For instance, drywall, um, and roofing products, they have their own rating and for fire. So what they do is in Florida they have testing sites, and They they have huge warehouses, and they build a house and they put certain roofing material, and they set the house on fire to see how the roofing material is going to last under fire. They do this with wind, for wind rating. The drywall, they burn the drywall and see how long it takes to burn through a piece of drywall. Doors, windows, same thing. So most building products have some kind of rating, if not for fire, for some other purpose, wind, rain, that kind of thing. Now, specific to the cladding, there is a NFPA test, and NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association, and there's rigorous testing done to determine if the cladding is combustible material or not. So naturally, they in the test they would burn the material. They would set the material on fire. They would have these flamethrowers spraying flames on the material, see what happens to it, right? Does it, what happens in 1 minute? What happens in 5 minutes, 10 minutes? And then, they go back and look and see if the product is still there or was it burnt to a crisp. Not naturally, if the product's not there anymore, there's no fire rating, and they're not going to approve it for construction, right? Because there's the building code. So the building code actually references the NFPA. So it's all why was the building codes and National Fire Protection Association, they write their own code. Why are these codes in existence? And they're in existence because of safety, so that builders and contractors don't go haywire and start building using any kind of product, any kind of method. And then next thing you know, if there's a hurricane, your roof blows off, right? Or there's a fire, your house burns down in 10 minutes, right? So it's all part of the whole building code, safety code issue, safety in buildings. And I got a text that came in from somebody, and they asked this question, and I didn't cover it before. Does the United States have this type of cladding? I know Martin asked whether Hawaii does. Now, does the United States? And I wish I could say no, but the answer is yes. Okay, but because we haven't had the high-rise fire like a Grenfell fire for investigation, we don't really know. But based on the research, right, that I got, the type of cladding similar to the one in Scotland and the UK was used in the United States on a terminal at the Dallas airport, an NFL Cleveland Browns stadium, a high school in Alaska, and a high-rise hotel in Baltimore. So supposedly there were testing done. So the story is there was a reporter or two that found out about the Grenfell fire, and he wanted to know if the same product or similar product was used in the US. So he was doing all this research and all that, and he uncovered these buildings. So I'm sure the handful of buildings that were uncovered, there's more like that. So it's just a matter of time trying to investigate and trace. And it could be that after testing, although the certain building had the same cladding, it wasn't the exact type, so the combustibility of the product was not as bad, and it would have passed the test or something. But I don't have any further information on that. So the main topic was talking about Scotland because it's the worst, but back home, in the United States. I'm pretty sure there are buildings with the same kind of product, but we just may not know. And uh, the developers who built the buildings may not even be wanna they may not even want to say if they knew, if they knew. They may not, because that opens up a whole nother can of worms. So we'll just have to see how things play out. But the answer is yes, United States has similar cladding. Um, Also, insurance companies may have more information on this subject because they're the ones that are insuring buildings. So I'm sure the insurance companies will want to know if a building had this type of cladding. They want to know because they may reduce their insurance coverage or cancel the insurance, right? So that's one company that is involved in the building industry because of this kind of situation. And then the other thing is, um, recently we've had a lot of wildfires, and these insurance companies are just getting hit left and right with claims. And so they're going to want to know too. And I'm pretty sure the insurance industry probably going to step in and require, like, if we're going to insure the house, you have to build it with this kind of material rather than just build whatever you want and we'll insure it. Because the insurance companies know if there's a fire, they're going to have to pay the claim. So it's better for them to insure the house that's well protected and well built from a fire rather than not, because then there's too many insurance claims and then they'll either go out of business or they have to raise their premiums or be very selective of who they cover. So they would become cherry pickers in the insurance industry. Like, oh, what? Your house is made out of wood? Okay, I'm not covering it then. So it's getting harder and harder to get insurance coverage at a good price because of all these natural disasters. And we're not talking about only the wildfires, we're talking about all the hurricanes and tornadoes that happen um, in those states, Florida, Georgia, and other nearby states that Louisiana, that have had major disasters in the past that would require uh, super insurance coverage. And you can't count on FEMA because they're not going to have enough money to cover everybody anyway. And so it relates to the insurance increase all over, especially in Hawaii with condo insurance. Why is it big increases, right? So it's all related together, believe it or not. And it's not getting better. It's just getting worse over time. So, Martin, you have any other last comments or anything like that before we sign off?
Oh, good session. I can see a lot of other good information you provided. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I haven't seen any free tickets come in yet, but hopefully we can pack our bags. And I heard they got good golf courses in Scotland. So yeah, I'll go sightseeing. Somebody else can go golf. I get too bored golfing. All right, so thank you everybody for attending and listening in, and hopefully you guys gained some information about the subject and building safety, fire safety. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about um, change orders in construction, and that's going to be helpful to homeowners and contractors and even realtors, or those of you who have anything to do with real estate or housing. That's always helpful. So we're here to help. Reach out to us if you have any comments or questions. Also, if you have any ideas for future master classes, we'll be happy to uh, look at your suggestion and we'll discuss it as a team and decide what we're gonna do, so. Thank you for attending. We'll see you at the next